Men who instinctively take personal responsibility for themselves and their families eventually realize that being atomized, rootless cosmopolitans inhibits their ability to exercise their willpower. Male agency naturally leads into the creation of a patriarchy. Raise your sons to be strong, masculine and dominant. Raise your daughters to be soft, feminine and submissive. The bad behavior that we see from women today is simply a rebellion against men's failure to benevolently dominate them. The failure of Western society is a failure to maintain the patriarchy.
So let's do it. Let's maintain and restore and rejuvenate the patriarchy. We are back. Noah, how are you this evening?
It's amazing. Oh, I'm doing really good. This is wonderful to be back on Patriarch Hour again.
Yes, it's been a long time coming. You and I have both been receiving demands from our viewers to get it back up and running. And as people who've seen my last two streams know, we've thrown out the boomer tech and we're in with the Zoomer tech, and we're streaming to you tonight from StreamYard, which is just fantastic and so easy to use. It's a breath of fresh air, so it's wonderful to catch up with you, Noah. And I guess maybe we can, before we sink our teeth into our topic, we can give the people at home a bit of an update on what you've been up to.
So I've been busy growing my beard longer.
I can tell that's probably taken quite a bit of effort.
Yeah, but my vow is to cut the beard when the well, not completely off, but to trim it when the COVID nonsense is over. But apparently in Australia, they want to stretch it out until 2022. So it looks like it'll be down to my belly button before I can cut it. Yeah, it's... so
you're going to wait till it's over worldwide, are you? You're going to wait till the whole world has given up on Corona?
Yeah, when everyone has admitted that they were wrong about Corona, and then I'll trim my beard. So it'll probably grow down to my feet at that point. Yeah, it's... Besides growing my beard, I've been busy finishing my book. The book ended up getting a fairly large extension. I originally wrote it for Giant Brains, and I was told that there's not enough of them to make a market. And so I started to write it for big brains, and I was told that that's even a tiny market. So now I'm writing it for mid brains as well. And so we did a big rewrite, adding more information in, so that when we talk about things like the big five and different psychological terms, people can, instead of having to go look it up, they can have it right in the book. Because it's a physical book, it means that you're going to be able to take it somewhere quiet, away from screens, away from distractions, and develop your agency in peace and quiet, which is really the best environment to develop your mind. And I wanted to get it really everything in the book. So we are done now. Today I should be able to finish the rest of the formatting, and then we're going to send it off to the printer, and it just takes a little while for them to process it, and we can start having books ready and courses ready.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very much looking forward to getting my hands on that. And like with all the books by my friends and allies in the world, putting it into the ark so that it can be preserved for generations to come. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've been doing, really. Just building the ark. It's a digital ark. However, I have my library ark, but RRTV is very, very soon to be relaunched. I won't go too far into it tonight because people who've watched my streams know the details. But yeah, we're going to have a total relaunch with a brand new anti-fragile, self-managed platform that I've been building. And we're going to bring Patriarch Hour and my show and a whole bunch of new stuff together, as well as bringing the Champions of the Light social network, which is linked below. If you're new to the Patriarch Hour, you can come and join us at championsofthelight.com. And very soon we'll be migrating the entire family of champions over to the new platform as well, which will all be integrated. And I'm very excited about that. And of course, I'm also working on the Logos Rising album, which has been taking a great deal of my time, but I'm really having so much fun. This is the most fun I've ever had recording an album.
Excellent. Yeah, I know, it sounds great. I'm really looking forward to hearing the full album.
It's going to be pretty epic. It's definitely an ambitious project. I'm going very big, attempting to bring maximum glory to God. Now, our topic tonight is the outrageous and triggering claim that only male agency will save the West. And I guess maybe we should assume that with our extended hiatus that we've had, that people might have forgotten what agency is, and maybe we could give a brief definition of that, and then focus on the male agency part, and then focus on what are we actually saving the West from, and why is male agency crucial to that. So what is agency, Noah?
Well, agency is what separates us from animals. It's what makes us, humans, instead of just being biological entities that reproduce. So that's what moves us up to that other level. And what it is our ability to perceive reality correctly, and then to act on that reality in a way which is harmonious and complete and in our control. Of course, no one has complete and total agency because no one can perceive all of reality. Humans anyway. No human can perceive all of reality, and no human can have 100% control over everything that is in his domain and his environment. But to the extent that we're capable of doing that, we have our level of agency. The more that we can, the more accurately we can perceive reality, and the more that we can control ourselves, that is, control our emotions, our thoughts, and our actions, the more we're going to be able to demonstrate agency in life.
Well, it sounds like a noble and desirable goal indeed, because, if there's one thing that we're seeing far too much of in the male of the species at the moment is a passivity and a sort of a victim status where we're just sort of being dragged along by, genuinely oppressive and predatory systems in the world. Governments and the culture itself is very hostile towards traditional masculinity and the male role in the family and in society. And so, I believe this is a deliberate plan across a long period of time to destabilize the West. And we're seeing the bitter fruits of that today, in America in particular, that this would not have happened if male agency had been maintained, because boundaries would have remained in place at the social level, at the horizontal level between neighbors. Social boundaries would have been maintained that would have prevented the kind of chaos that's erupting now from even being possible. And it must be difficult. I know I've grown up in an age where my agency has been under attack and dismantled, and I've been programmed incorrectly from early on to not have the agency that's required to be an efficacious and powerful man. And it's only in since becoming a father and becoming politically aware and active, and also my spiritual and religious awakening over the last few years, that I've realized the absolute urgency of developing my own agency, which is an ongoing process. I'm far from my potential still, and I have much to develop. But it's as I've been developing my agency through both my spiritual life, prayer life, and then introducing physical change, like much more activity, multiple workouts a day, and a much healthier diet in which I'm only taking in the calories that I need and nothing more, and also fasting for both physical health and spiritual reasons. These have, just in the last 6 months, I've felt a massive boost in my clarity of thought, my ability to recognize truth and falsehoods, and my ability to lead my family appropriately. So I guess they're kind of my steps that I've been taking towards agency. But you work with a lot of young men and women as well, Noah, and I imagine that there'll be lots of different ways in which people take those first steps in developing their agency. And what are the recommendations that you find yourself making most often to them?
Well, agency is partially, there is a genetic propensity that a person might want to develop agency more than another individual. It has to do with the personality factor that's called conscientiousness. That's one of the big 5 personality factors. When you're a conscientious person, you are conscious of what is needed to be done. You're conscious of the world around you. You are focused and determined on doing the best that you can to understand what's happening and to fulfill your role in society, or at least to behave in an honorable way. So those kind of people, they're going to be more interested in developing agency. And those people, no matter what the situation is, if they're very high in conscientiousness, they're going to find a way to develop agency. But for many of us, it is necessary to have structures around us which encourage the development of agency. And that is things like church. I recommend for a lot of clients that they go and find the most conservative, most masculine church they can find. The one that has the tightest boundaries on what is acceptable behavior that they can find, because the process of going and integrating into that group is going to help. I also recommend that they find a male-only hierarchy, that is a group of men who are engaged in some sort of a internet's lost its agency. Yes, so that they can find a group of men who will help them to recognize where they're missing an agency, a group of higher agency men. And I teach them how to do that. And then we actually do exercises with them where they practice controlling their thoughts and their emotions. We are told nowadays to do whatever feels good. And it can feel good to give in to your emotions. You can feel good to give in to your lust, to give in to your greed for food and for whatever. It can feel good to give in to your anger.
Yes.
And none of those desires are necessarily in of themselves wrong unless they control you. The problem is they become vices when they control you. For example, patience is a virtue. But if you are excessively patient in situations where you need to act, you become passive, and it's no longer a virtue. It's now a vice. Passivity is a vice. And so to a large extent, it's a matter of correctly assessing the situation and then controlling your emotions. And actually, you have to control your emotions before you control your thoughts, because the emotions are much more powerful, and they're really down deep in the brainstem. And they're down in that.
They're upstream in the time process, aren't they? The emotions. I know from my own personal experience that I arc up sometimes before I even know why, and it takes me a couple of moments to why am I suddenly feeling this rage in me? And then then I have to identify the source of it and take some action to reduce my rage or express it if it's appropriate.
And it's interesting, there are times when that ability to get angry quickly could actually save your life. If you are under attack by, you know, maybe a vicious dog or a vicious two-legged predator, you end up, if you're a thinker, you're going to get punched in the face. Okay. If you're a actor, if you're a doer, if you're a person who acts and then thinks, you're more likely to survive a encounter of rapid violence. Now, fortunately, we're not facing that very often right now. And if you are an actor instead of a thinker, we can teach you how to think so that when you're not in a situation of immediate danger, you can actually think before you respond and temper your responses with wisdom. We can also, if you're a thinker, we can teach you to act quickly when you're facing danger. And to some extent, you'll see this with a lot of autistic, and nowadays we have more and more people who are headed in that direction. It's a very systematizing, deep thought type, right brain, masculine way of thinking. And it's very, very good when it comes to long-term strategic planning and things like that, and noticing things. You know, they tend to notice things, but they notice them, in a way, they notice them very slowly. They do notice things, but they notice them, they notice the deeper things, and they notice so many things that they get lost in all the things they notice, and they tend not to take action. And
the dreamers, hey?
Oh no, don't, Margot. It's not for men. It's not only for men. There is going to be a very, very important aspect to this, is to help women understand what kind of men they need to look for to be in their community, that they need to draw close to in their community, that they need to look for as potential husbands for their children, or if they're single, for their husband. Women are absolutely always welcome to listen into the show. I think understanding what makes a good man helps us all, men and women, to build up our society and build up our culture and build up our communities by encouraging the good things that we see in other men. And this is important even for women. Women can be very inspiring and encouraging men to live up to good masculine values by valuing those things themselves. But you need to understand what those things are in order to encourage them. Yeah. So sorry, go ahead.
Well, you know, I was just thinking about, you know, my own experience of where I've lacked agency, and I know that for me as a child, I was always I shied away greatly from violence. I was very afraid of violence and being hurt, and I was bullied when I was young, and you know, so it was easy in easy times socially, where, you know, passivity or pacifism is being promoted everywhere in the sort of the feminized culture we've grown up in. It was very easy for me to just assume this this new age modernist perspective that violence is universally wrong, and I don't need to prepare for it or worry about it. It's not going to happen to me. But you know, as I've gotten older, I've gotten wiser to the truth of the world and the rhyming patterns of history, and you know, it's pretty plain for everyone to see now that violence is far closer to our doorsteps than we would like it to be, and it's probably going to get more so. And you know, as a result, I've started training in MMA this year, and I'm taking my oldest son with me, and it's been a remarkable experience for me, because I've gone in with, you know, the full intention to learn everything I can from the people who are much better at it. I've trained in some martial arts in the past, but not the sparring and combat type, you know, more the form type. Iaido was my art, and that's a samurai sword drawing art. It requires strength and skill and focus and all of those mindful good things that you get out of martial arts, but I liked it because I didn't have to face violence. I didn't have to actually put myself at any physical risk, and so it's been a remarkable experience to jump into an MMA dojo and just start basically just step in and being the new punching bag for these guys who are far more experienced and better at it than I am, and also to notice my own reactions, and where in that moment, we were speaking before about whether you're an actor or a thinker. I've been a thinker my whole life, so I'm developing my agency to act, which means that I have to develop good defensive and offensive habits in the ring, which I don't have yet. But even though my mind is absolutely determined that I'm going to hold my guard and block a punch and then throw one back in the correct form. Even though my mind is totally there and I'm totally willing, I am still in many of those moments flinching in a way that makes me more vulnerable, because that low agency is still there for me. So it's been great, week by week, to feel that gradually getting under my control, so that my instinct reaction to cringe or cower when there's a punch coming my way is turning into an ability to say, well, it's better if it hits me this way so that I control where the energy goes, and then I have an opportunity to respond appropriately, instead of just getting my ass kicked, which has happened a few times, and it's been fun.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point, the ability to take a punch, the ability for us in life to take a punch, to take a negative impact to our lives, to roll with that, and then to keep hitting back, and to, as much as possible, absorb it in a way that causes the least amount of damage. A lot of people, they think that learning to fight is only about combat, but all of life is a struggle, and fighting is just a different kind of struggle. And if you look at it that way, you will see that many of the skills that you learn in fighting are then applicable later in life. There are a lot of men, for example, that I talk to, they don't know how to go up and approach women, for example, single men. Even if you're a married man, you need to be able to go up and approach people and talk to them and get to know them and build connections in your community. And to do that, you have to be an actor, not just a thinker. A conversation, you don't have time to think for a long period of time when someone says something to you about how you're going to reply. You've got to have a certain instinct. It's like a dance. It's almost like a sparring match. And you got to, especially if you're dealing with men that like to, poke you, you've got to be able to bob and weave and jump verbally in order to have a successful interaction with these people. And so learning how to be in the moment as an actor and not trying to overthink things is very important. And then we have a lot of people that their entire life is revolving around their instinctual actions. So they're at a very animal level where they just act and they don't think about the outcome or the consequences of what they do. And it really gets in the way of them achieving their long-term goals. They achieve their immediate goal, which is very often to simply feel better. They'll do something in the short term that makes them feel better, but it gets in the way of their long-term goals. And you can see this in politics. You can see this in business, and you can see this in social spheres as well. People making short-term decisions, which end up having long-term consequences that are contrary to them achieving their goals. And teaching these people strategy, teaching them, see, they already know tactics. They know how to deal in the moment, but it's teaching them strategy. Tactics is what you need right now to fight. It's that moment-to-moment interaction. Strategy is making sure that you either avoid the fights you can't win, and that you show up for the fights you can win.
And that you show up in such a way that you control the field.
Yes, and the fights you want to win, because sometimes you just don't care. It's not worth fighting. My great grandfather said it's not worth kicking every dog that barks at you, or you won't get anywhere in life. So you have to know when to fight and when not to fight, and there are actually ways that you can make these decisions. It's not that, this guy is smarter and therefore he knows things. He is smarter means he can process the concepts faster, but anyone can learn how to process these things. It might just take a bit longer. Their thinking process might be a bit slower, but they can figure it out as well. And a lot of that is learning. And
I must say that for me, the fastest way to be learning is actually getting punched. It's been the best learning curve for me, because frankly, I don't really like it very much when a heavy fist of a 6'2" giant smashes me in the face, and it rattles me, and I don't want it to happen again. So I can feel in myself that the instincts begin to correct themselves out of necessity to avoid that negative experience, and that's how I learn and develop my agency.
Well, and it's interesting too, because that's even helping you with your long-term decisions, your strategy, because you're thinking to yourself, if I was a little stronger, I could block this punch better and I'd be slightly faster, and that would be less likely to get hit. And so your training, besides the actual combat training, your physical training, you're less likely to miss it because you have this incentive to do it. You're less likely to eat inappropriately because you don't want to add extra kilos that are just going to get in your way. But on the other hand, you don't want to undereat either, because you're not going to keep your strength up. And so your whole entire life starts adjusting to making sure you're not getting punched in the face more than necessary. And the advantages are multifold. And that's why it's important that men have some sort of mission in life. Most men, it's get up, eat breakfast, go, which is usually garbage, go to your work, come home, eat dinner, go to sleep. And that's their life. There's no grand mission. There's not even something as simple as I'd like to get hit in the face less. You know, there's not even a simple mission.
They're avoiding that situation in the first place. And I've you're absolutely right that you know, just this year so far, you know, what happened immediately was I recognized how quickly I was gassing out when we do our sparring sessions at the end, because we do these like 2-minute rounds. You spar a guy for 2 minutes, you get 30 seconds, and then it's the next guy, and we just keep going for 10 or 15 minutes. So, you know, on my first session, by the second guy, I'd gone full energy in, and I was spent, and then I had to spend the next 10 minutes getting my ass kicked, and it was not only embarrassing but you know, painful. And so I've introduced more high intensity training into my week between sessions, because my stamina for that sort of high intensity hasn't been there. I've focused on weight training and strength, but not on stamina and endurance. And so, yeah, changing my day-to-day workout pattern in order that I can be more resilient in the dojo has been helpful. And again, you know, it's still a work in progress.
Excellent. Yeah, everything changes when you have some mission in life. And of course, your mission to become competent in the areas of violence is not your end mission either. You have an even higher mission. And you have this mission stack where you have your highest mission and all of the supporting missions below it. And this is you have a well-integrated life. You have a good reason to get up every morning and go and do things. And there are a lot of people, a lot of men, the reason they don't have agency is in part because they have no reason to develop agency. They're not doing anything that requires agency. You have a very little amount of agency is required to wake up in the morning and go to work. And since COVID, there's a heck of a lot of people that aren't even doing that. You know, they're not doing anything. They're feeding themselves, and that's it. Now,
and of course, the world wants them to take that opportunity to reduce their agency even further. So it's giving out the free premium accounts to Pornhub, you know, which is the fast track to low agency.
Yes, exactly. And you know, it's pleasure without any work. If you and I had 3 months vacation because of COVID, like we work for ourselves, so there is no vacation.
Nothing's changed.
We can rest. We can rest when we're dead. There's no vacation.
Now the world lives how I lived already.
Exactly. So what happens for us is that if we had 3 months vacation, all we would do is fill it up with goals we wanted to accomplish. We wouldn't go and just, you know, watch TV and do nothing and vegetate for 3 months. Because we have a higher mission in life, and taking away our job doesn't affect that tremendously. It means we're going to do other things. We're probably going to go out and create, you know, if we worked for someone else and suddenly we were fired due to COVID, we would then create our own thing, because that's the kind of men we are.
It's hard for me to even empathize with the man on the other end of the spectrum, because I've had determination and purpose my whole life, and always had a mission, and it's obviously changed over time. But you know, when you are working with guys who are on that lower end of the spectrum, where their life, you know, at least seems to them purposeless, what are the steps that young men in particular can take, or even older men, to find a purpose that will then inspire them to start taking action towards that higher agency life?
One of the questions I ask every single man, and if you're a man watching this, you can ask this to yourself and then get back to me with the answer. You can message me. You don't have to have a session. Message me with the answer, and you know, if you want to discuss it more, we can do that privately. Ask yourself the question, and you have to do this with a calm mind, so you can really get down to the true answer, not the lie that you tell yourself. Ask down in the true answer: do you love yourself? This is an important question. It sounds incredibly effeminate when you talk about this. Oh, do you love yourself? Blah blah blah. But it is important for men. And when I ask that question, 90% of my clients do not love themselves. A huge percentage of them loathe themselves, and that's the exact word they use. They hate themselves. If you loathed and hated and didn't love somebody, how much effort would you put in to helping that person find purpose in life, taking care of them physically, mentally, emotionally, etc.? You wouldn't do anything. You wouldn't help them. Probably you would sabotage them on purpose because they're a terrible person that you don't like. Sorry, my infant babies are slamming on the door. I think my wife took them out. But yeah, you wouldn't take care of yourself, or you wouldn't take care of someone you hated. If you hate yourself, you're not going to take care of yourself. And then we usually dig down into the reasons why you don't love yourself. And it's usually because the person never felt truly loved by anyone in their life. Their mother and father
didn't. Worthy of the love.
Exactly. Their mother and father didn't love them. And see, in a way, we are our father or our male ancestors. We are our male ancestors, just with some variations of repeating. And if our male ancestor, our father or grandfather or our uncles or whatever was our primary male influence on our life, if he didn't love us, then we don't have a pattern of how to love ourselves in a masculine way. And that also means we don't have a pattern of how to take care of ourselves properly. You know, and you do the same thing. We teach our sons things, and we set boundaries and we're strict with them because it's good for them, not because it annoys us what they do. It has nothing to do with it. It's because it's good for them. But we also teach them and build them up so they're strong enough to meet the challenges that we give them. And if you're a healthy man, you do that to yourself. You take care of yourself, as you mentioned, you know, proper diet, exercise, learning things you need to learn. We take care of ourselves because we realize that we care about ourselves and we need to take care of ourselves in order to accomplish our missions.
The one thing that's been really helpful to me, because, you know, I have definitely, you know, in my grappling with my own fallenness and brokenness and sinful nature, you know, I have experienced that self-loathing, perhaps not to the same degree that that many poor souls are suffering. But, you know, I know what it feels like to look at myself in the mirror and go, you fucking pathetic piece of shit at certain points in my life. And, you know, becoming a father was absolutely a turning point for me, where I could no longer live for myself or concern myself with, you know, whether I feel good about me or not, because I have to live for these boys. But in that process of living for them and for my wife and for the family that we've started together, it's actually helped me to really develop that healthy self-esteem, self-love. And of course, you know, ultimately for me, discovering Jesus and coming to faith in Christ has been the ultimate step there, because, you know, I rest assured that the creator of the universe loves me. Who the hell am I to step away from his will and hate someone that he loves? And so in living in the here and now for my family, I have to present to my boys not a broken, self-loathing man, but a strong, self-loving and other-serving man. And the example that I want to set to the boys is probably my primary mission and motivator, because I'm only here for, you know, several decades more. I'm not here forever. But my legacy is potentially here forever through my sons and through their children and beyond. And so if I don't focus on, you know, presenting to them the best version of myself so that they can then repeat that for their sons, then I'm contributing to the degenerate cycle over generations, and that's not fair. I want to leave the world, and in particular, I want to leave my lineage in a slightly, if not extremely, better state than it was given to me.
Yeah, you brought up two really interesting points, and the one you elaborated on it well, so I won't mention it. That is, if God loves you, who are you to say you're unlovable? You know, you're going to disagree with God. The other is, you know, oh, sorry, God, you're wrong. I'm not lovable. This is you know, it's
that's
blasphemy.
Idolatry.
Yes, exactly. And then the other one is that loving your children and your wife helps you to also love yourself. Your wife, once you marry, you become one flesh. You are a single entity now. And if you cannot love yourself, how can you love that other part of you that is now your wife, that other entity? And how can she love you if you are sending these signals out all the time that I'm unlovable, I am not a good man, I'm whatever, you know, I'm despicable. Also with your children. Your children are literally
these stories like I'm unlovable.
Yes. Yeah, and your
are.
children are literally a piece of you, and if you're telling them that you're unlovable, they're hearing the message that a piece of me is unlovable, and that's why people have the sense that they are unlovable, is because that's what their parents did to them. And at some point we have to end that cycle, because if you're unlovable, why should you fight for your own survival?
About being, these stories we have in our heads about being unlovable will manifest in behavior that proves the story, because we're always looking to confirm our internal narrative. That's a very basic instinct, is to whatever we believe in our minds, we want to project it onto the world to feel okay. It's a very primal instinct to do that, and agency is also resisting your own bullshit and not projecting it onto the external reality. But if you're in a state of weak agency, then when you're telling yourself all the time, I'm unlovable, you're going to want to prove that by becoming an arsehole and doing things that make you genuinely unlovable to others. And that's a really bad spiral to be riding.
For men, cognitive dissonance is painful. And so if we're telling ourselves we're something, we will tend, as you said, to live up to that, because it quells that pain of dissonance that we have in our mind. And the way that we start to love ourselves is in part by saying, I am lovable. But how? How do we know we're lovable? Well, part of it is, as you mentioned, if God loves us, we must have some good characteristic, or at least the potential to develop virtue. If our wife loves us, then there must be something good about us. If our children love us, there must be something. But we need to figure out what that actual something is. And that's why we start to look at virtues. We need to understand what real virtues are, not the virtues that are promoted by the world that we live in, that's designed to undermine our agency by telling us that things such as passivity and tolerance are virtues when they're actually vices. We need to look at real virtues. And we need to develop and cultivate real virtues, so that when I say to myself, I'm lovable, I say I'm lovable because I am an honest man. I'm lovable because I'm a courageous man. I'm lovable because I am a man who is honorable and who takes care of his wife and his children. And that, you can go on about the things that make you a lovable man.
And so, I guess rebuilding the narrative is the first step, and that's a hard thing for people to do when they don't feel it yet. But it can be a creative writing exercise, if nothing else, to begin with. Write a new story.
Needs to be written down.
Yeah,
you absolutely need to write it, and you need to write it with a pen. You need to write it with a pen on a paper, because that actually influences how your brain perceives reality. Writing is a form of very complex thinking. It takes a network of information. It takes a very chaotic information that's in our mind, and it forces us to structure it into a hierarchy. Hierarchies are incredibly important, especially for the organization of the male brain. We structure things into a hierarchy in our mind, and then we write that hierarchy down on paper. And it's why you often have to write things 3 or 4 or 5 times, because you're restructuring it each time. And once you've done that, it becomes permanent. And one of the things I have people do is I have them write little big post-it notes, and put them around places, so that they come in the morning and they're trying to develop a virtue. And they're going to look at this and say, I am an honest man because I do not lie, or whatever it happens to be. It's an affirmation that they're going to be honest, and they're going to continue to develop that virtue, or whatever virtue they're trying to develop. And by reminding themselves constantly, keeping it on the mind, they start to change their behavior. They start to change how they think and how they feel about things, and they get control of their thoughts. There are other exercises we do with people as well, such as learning how to eliminate negative thoughts. And the reason that we talk about a lot of these things as, why male agency will save the West, is because female agency needs to be primarily focused on the raising of children. The vast majority
Yes.
of women will be happiest raising children. And whatever we do, whatever assignment we give them besides raising children, simply distracts them from that most important assignment. It is our job as men to go out and fight the chaos in the world. It is not right that we send women out to do that. Someone was recently saying that, oh, feminism won't end until good women stand up to the feminists. And I said, what's a good woman to you? And he describes a soft, gentle, feminine, submissive type of woman. I said, you really think that kind of woman is going to go fight some butch lesbian, get in a verbal argument with some butch lesbian who's been indoctrinated for half a decade in a university? This is not going to
Probably
keep
not.
her. Yeah, it's going to ruin the woman, because she's going to have to be fighting all the time. Fighting is not what women are good at. It's not what they should be doing. And it will actually take away their focus from their important job. I remember when my wife and I would have the odd political conversation. And then when we had children, my wife said, I don't want to hear any more about the news or politics, because I'm trying to breastfeed a baby. And I don't want to get stressed and pass that on to the kid. I want to be totally like zen and relaxed and calm so that I can be the best mother I can be. And since then, we don't talk about politics. And it actually is very effective. It keeps her calm. She can focus on children and fun and the sunshine and taking them outside and whatnot, instead of worrying about battling the problems of the world. That's my job. I have to protect her from those things.
And something that we've talked about quite a bit in previous episodes of Patriarch Hour is, this idea that that it's up to women to fight back feminism, even in the ideological sense, is a false premise, because feminism has only become such a problem in the West because men have allowed it to. It was men who caved in and allowed those first steps to be taken under the pretenses of lies, of course, under a propaganda campaign. They were lied to about how great it would be for society to grant universal suffrage, which has then, and obviously, not everyone's going to agree with me about this, but I've reached this conclusion some time ago that the female vote has been a major problem, because women vote democratically on very different incentives than men, and also men are very influenced by women for obvious reasons. There's no one more influential in my life than my wife, and so the traditional early democratic model was that men of land and gentry were able to vote, and that was it. Later it became men were allowed to vote, one vote per family, because they were able to be conscripted as cannon fodder in these ridiculous wars that we got dragged into in Europe. And then it's just continued to go from there. And of course, it probably won't be long before they're already allowing dead people to vote in the United States. That's another story. But this idea that universal suffrage is a universal good has been thoroughly debunked by the fruits of democracy. And the reason why it's not actually oppressive to deny women the vote is because, as I say, women have incredible political influence over their husbands when they are, the female head of a household and family. They influence their sons as well, and they determine the type of men that their sons are going to be. They have the most direct influence on their children in their young years, which affects the next generation of men powerfully. And so when we fast forward, over 100 years, and we see that the fruits of universal suffrage are these crazy new waves of feminism that are basically trying to completely destroy masculinity and now even destroy Western civilization. We were had, and it was men who allowed it to happen. And so it's going to be men being brave enough to say this and being brave enough to upset the women and say, actually, no, sorry, you can't vote anymore. This is not good for you or me or anyone else. And we're taking it back. That's a big step. And that's going to take high agency men to actually present that into law. But it will happen. It has to happen or we're lost.
It's happened. It happened in the past. There are times in Rome and in the Grecian city-states where they allowed women to vote. it just about destroyed their nation.
Oops.
And then they said, okay, that was a mistake. And they actually, first they started allowing them to be lawyers, which is kind of how it happened in the West too. First, they started to enter into traditionally male-only professions, and then they allowed them. Then they allowed them into voting as well, and it was that pattern, and it's been recognized in the past not to work, and it's been undone again. Now there is a good moral, ethical, and legal argument for disallowing, and it's not even disallowing, it's no longer allowing women to vote. Men allow women to vote. Yes, women never earned the vote. We gave them the vote. We continue to tolerate them voting, but they didn't earn it. In fact, most men also didn't earn their vote. As you mentioned before, it was the landed gentry at one point that could vote, but most men also have not earned their vote.
Yes.
The way
Although,
that you have,
hypothetically, they could earn it, if they are willing to be conscripted, and even that's gone now. For now, they're not going to conscript men into I don't think there's going to be any international conscription like there used to be, because we're fighting amongst ourselves in the West now.
And even if you were going to conscript a group of men, about half the men in the West are physically incapable of any kind of martially effective action. Many of them are intellectually incapable of it. So you'd have to have some sort of maybe you have to have some physical qualifications. You have to have a minimum of training. You have to, as our ancestors did, you had to be armed in order to be allowed to vote. Those things used to go together. In Switzerland, you used to have to bring your sword and show that you had a sword in proper gear in order to vote. So you'd actually come to vote with your sword. And this was your proof that, it was your proof that you were actually a man and that you were able to vote. Now, it is interesting. There is a good argument why we shouldn't continue to tolerate women voting, and that is the sovereignty argument. So agency is the basis of sovereignty. And what sovereignty is the ability to deny other people outside your group from having power over you. The way that we gain sovereignty, we start off as animalistic humans almost. You'll see this with a baby, no agency. And we don't expect them to have agency. That's not a flaw of a baby. They behave completely on instinct, and they get in a lot of little trouble because they are behaving like animals, and we teach them agency over time. Now, once you have a sufficient body of high agency men, they federate together. And federation doesn't mean that you just cooperate. It doesn't mean that someone rules you top down. What it means is you agree to work together, subsuming a small amount of your individuality in order to cooperate with the group. So you agree to be part of something bigger than you. And if that group is large enough, and if it's well enough organized, and if the men have enough agency, they can deny other people from having power over them, and they become sovereign. And once they're sovereign, they can form a nation. You can't form a nation if you're a slave. You're not a nation of slaves. You can't form a nation if you're subject to someone else. You're not sovereign then. You are a vassal. We don't want to be vassals. Men of the West do not enjoy being subject to anyone. We want to be sovereign men. Even when we're subject to a king, we do so because it increases our sovereignty, not because it decreases it.
And this is why, partly as well, there's been such a programmed and deliberate and consistent attack on our national identity as Westerners, and why we've been scattered in the way that we have, because, we are the ultimate threat. They're absolutely right that white people are the ultimate threat because of what we are capable of creating and destroying. But we're no longer such a threat. We're a toothless tiger at the moment because our agency and our sovereignty have been diminished over the last century. And I mean, I believe that this was the primary motivation for the phony wars that they created in Europe, to pit us against each other so that we would be ripe for the taking and the invasions that follow. So, the redeveloping of our national identity is very important to me and part of my mission, because this is one of those foundational ideas that enables sovereignty to reemerge over time.
Yeah, a national identity, and nation being a group of people who are united by culture and genetics. This, not just one, not just the other.
Yes,
It's a mixture of these things. It's both. When you have a group like this, you are willing to subsume a little bit of your individuality. That is to federate with such a group. It's not possible to federate with a group that has a different culture than you, or who has different genetic interests than you. The reason the genetics are important is because different groups have different strategies for survival, and they're incompatible often with each other. And it's not that you good, me good, you bad. It's we're different. We're following different paths, and we can't follow different paths and stay together. It doesn't work. And so there'll always be
also
conflict.
that very simple binary choice at the end of it, which is would you like to be a vassal or a sovereign? And you are one or the other. There are good times, and we've experienced them in our lifetime. There are good times where things seem peachy, and it feels like you're kind of in Libertopia. Like you're being left alone. You can kind of just live your life, and things are all good. But that's part of the trickery too, is that we've been conned largely through the financial system into not seeing that we are slaves. We're slaves to international finance. And that's been the game for over a century now. People are beginning to wake up to it. And it's when those structures come down and begin to collapse, which they will in the wake of this pandemic and all of the games that are being played around the world politically. As these structures fall and the economy crashes and we face the hard times, then we're going to really find out who among us has compatible values, who among us has compatible culture, compatible ideals for the future, and we must federate with them as quickly as possible, because it'll be the other group coming for us if we're not strong enough to defend ourselves or go for them.
Yep. And the worse things get, the harder people tend to split, and the splits start becoming over almost nothing. And you'll see a total breakdown of society. We can't maintain sovereignty if we won't federate. We can't federate if we don't have agency. You don't see animals federate together. You see perhaps wolves, for example, will work together, but that's very much a strict.
They're a high agency animal. They are the highest agency animals.
Exactly, they are, and that's why we get along with wolves, which are dogs nowadays. We get along with dogs well, is because they are high agency. They are capable of having duty and loyalty and honor within their tribe, they have their own culture, so to speak.
They certainly do.
And especially well-bred dogs, they have their own culture. You have a German Shepherd, you know what to expect from your German Shepherd. If it's a well-bred dog, it's going to behave in a certain way. And it's not quite the same way that a Doberman behaves, and it's not quite the same way that a Rottweiler behaves. And so you're going to pick the animal that is going to fit your particular needs, and you're going to be able to count on it. We need to also be the kind of people that in our group, we understand what our group agrees on, what is expected, on what is honorable, on what behavior is accepted. But it really is that federation of men, and it has to be men. We will not send women out to fight and die. No high agency man is going to agree to send women out to fight and die for the survival of our culture. On top of that, the social structure of a federation of men, the hierarchy that forms, cannot have women enter into it because it immediately decays. And there are good reasons for that.
Sorry, ladies, you don't get to be in the men's club.
There are good reasons for that, and it's because we love women that happens. We will not subject them to the kind of deprivations and suffering that we'll happily subject ourselves and other men to. They don't understand
it. Like my wife still doesn't understand, even with all of the rational explanations I can offer. When I tend to not report the extent of my injuries when I come home from MMA these days, unless they're plainly obvious, because she, when I say, oh yeah, I got hit like 5 times in the head tonight, that really shook me a bit, and she's like, that's just stupid. Why would you let somebody punch you in the head? And I said, I didn't let him punch me in the head. I actually blocked 95 punches, and 5 got through and they hurt. Like, how is that letting him? But it's just we're 2 different animals, and she'll never understand that. But she's clever enough to understand the function of it and the benefits of it to her potentially in the future. For me to be a competent defender of the family, she does like that. Women like that. but they don't really
Yeah.
want to know how we get there and the details and how we men treat each other in the process, because it's very foreign.
Yeah, and we men improve largely due to internal competition within the group. And a lot of people think you have either competition or cooperation, like it's some sort of a binary choice. But actually, you cannot have competition without cooperation. The two are inseparably linked. So if you and I are going to stand in a ring and hit each other, there are rules, and we have to cooperate and agree on those rules. If we're going to work together, we agreed to meet at a certain time today. Now our show is
and we met at
for
exactly
attention.
that time, which was awesome. Exactly to the second. Yes, we're men of honor.
Absolutely. And we're competing with other men for attention in in the digital sphere here. So we're competing, but we're also cooperating, and that's extremely important. Men in this cooperation and competition. They learn about where they're deficient. So you go boxing, you learn about where you're deficient, and that knowledge makes you a better man because it informs you where you need to be stronger. And
the other experience of that cooperation and competition existing in harmony, again, in my experience in the dojo, is that I feel the closest bond with the guys who have dominated me, because they played by the rules, and I learned from them. And there's a kind of male intimacy available in that combat arena when there are rules and we're honoring those rules. So I trust these men to stop before it goes too far, but they'll take it as far as they need to teach me what I need to learn. And yeah, it's through that competition with them that we're cooperating in the light of the rules, and I draw closer to them, and those male bonds increase.
Yes, and we as men, when we see a man who's better than us, we don't usually get it's not a masculine thing to get jealous. Some men do, of course. It's not a masculine thing to be jealous. It is a masculine thing to look up to that man and say, how can I become better like him? What is he doing differently than me? And how can I imitate that? Women, on the other hand, they don't do very well in competition. Competition is very destructive to women. It messes with their hormone profile. It messes with their testosterone, their estrogen, especially their cortisol. And for men, cortisol, excessive systemic cortisol is bad for everyone, but spikes of cortisol actually allow us to change how our brain is functioning and reprogram ourselves to be better at something. When we exercise, some of the pain is lactic acid, but we also have a rush of cortisol to the body, which says, hey, build these muscles up. They're not strong enough. We need to be stronger for next time. And so we benefit from that. Women, though, when they have excess cortisol, they tend to get that apple-shaped figure. It's excessive stress for women is extremely destructive. Women need to sleep about an hour more than men on average, and they need to have a much lower stress life. We're built to handle stress. We're built to take damage. They're not. They're built to be in the most peaceful, calm environment possible. And women who don't seek that out generally aren't very feminine. It's extremely rare you'll meet a woman who says, I'm super hyper competitive, and also very feminine. I mean, they can say that, but it's obvious by their comments that that's not true. And so for women, they wouldn't benefit being in a male hierarchy from the competition. Even if men could treat them just like another man, they wouldn't benefit from it because the competition is overall destructive to them. And this is why they can't be part of a male hierarchy. And this is why they can't be part of the group that enables sovereignty within a nation. And again, this is why they can't vote. Allowing them to vote without giving them the benefit of that corrective measures that men impose on each other is bad for women and bad for men. There's, if you're a man and you mouth off to another man, you're going to get punched in the face. Back when we used to have armed societies and dueling was allowed, we had very polite societies because men would think before they said something to other men, because you could get punched, you could get shot, you could get stabbed. There was all kinds of terrible, horrible, permanent repercussions for running your mouth. Nowadays, people do that online and there's no repercussions. And the thing is, for women, there never is repercussions. They can pretty much say whatever they want and they don't get smacked over it. And that is not good for them. Now, mind you, we have always had this issue: is how do we deal with women who are GSRRMing, who are gossiping, shaming, rallying, this kind of negative behavior. That behavior can be okay within a certain controlled context, but if it gets out of hand, it's a problem. If you look to old German law from the German states, dealing with gossips was one of the biggest issues they had. It was usually about 80% women and 20% men that were gossiping. And they had all kinds of, it disrupted the culture at a lower level. But women, they don't have the benefit of the masculine hierarchy and competition for them. Women who get into a group, they do have some sort of a female hierarchy. They'll usually be a mother hen and then a bunch of younger women. But it's not the same as the masculine hierarchy. Women benefit mostly from a focus on cooperation with very little competition, and men benefit mostly from a competition with cooperation only as necessary to make the cooperation work, or the competition work. And so our way of functioning and our role in society is very different. Another way to put it is that women are inward focused on the children and the elderly, and men are externally focused. And almost all voting historically was how to deal with threats to the tribe.
Yes.
Therefore, it's the man's realm. People say
yes,
politics is war by other means.
Yes,
that's
exactly,
the man's realm.
That's right. That's what I was going to say. Or put another way, the ballot is a proxy for the bullet, and ultimately, laws are only legitimate if they are able to be upheld by violence, and violence is only effective if it's upheld by large groups of men who work in cooperation and follow the rules together and have a tremendous capacity for violence. That's the winning team. The biggest, baddest, most tight in-group preference, strongest men. And it's not the West at the moment, but it can be again, because it's in our DNA, it's in our very blood, it's in our nature. It just has to be reawakened. And agency, male agency, is the path back to Western sovereignty. And that, at the end of this hour that we've just reached, I think is a good nutshell version of why it is male agency and only male agency that will save the West.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, this has been a wonderful discussion.
They always fly by. They fly by. And I know that in past episodes, we have just kind of gone on and on for an hour and a half, 2 hours, but it is Patriarch Hour. And as men of honor, we're going to play by the rules from now on. So thanks for joining us, everyone in the audience. And thanks for those who are watching this on playback. You can find Noah at smv4k.com for his coaching, and you can find me right here on whatever platform you're watching on, and mostly active on Twitter and at championsofthelight.com. That's our social network, and we are looking for men of the West of high agency, or men of the West who wish to develop their agency. We want to welcome you into our citadel at championsofthelight.com, because we've gathered a great tribe of people there. There's men and women, families. It's a family environment. It's a very positive, healthy, uplifting, and encouraging environment. And there are men there who will be able to help you develop your agency if you feel like that's something you need to work on. And Noah is chief among them. So definitely get in touch with Noah if you feel like he can be of help to you. And we will be back next Friday night in Australia, Friday morning where Noah is, and Friday Friday somewhere everywhere in the world by now. But we'll be back next week at the same time for the 16th installment of Patriarch Hour. Noah, thanks so much again. It's been wonderful to jump back in the saddle with you.
My pleasure, James. I'm looking forward to next week.
All right, folks. And everybody have a fantastic weekend, and stay safe and develop that agency. See you next time.